Welcome to Our Ventura TV. I'm Lyn Fairly. Some of you may know me here in Ventura from my radio show. I am fortunate today to be the hostess of this segment because I have the Harbor Commissioner, Mary Anne Rooney, as my guest. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
You are the very first female Harbor Commissioner, and you were elected, was it 3 years ago?
In 2010, right.
2010.
Right, to the Port of Hueneme.
To the Port of Hueneme,
right.
Absolutely. And we're going to talk a little bit about the Port of Hueneme. Okay. If you've been living under a rock here in Ventura, I'm sure you haven't been, but just in case, I want to give you some details about the port.
Okay.
The Oxnard Harbor District is the grantee for U.S. Foreign Trade Zone number 205. This is the first zone ever established in Ventura County and was created to serve the broad interests of importers and exporters throughout California's Central Coast region. The Port Hueneme Foreign Trade Zone 205 is comprised of 3 sites totaling approximately 840 acres and includes the commercial seaport, South Oxnard, where the vehicle preparation centers are, and North Oxnard, where the freezer facilities are, all within 5 miles of Port Hueneme. You are the keeper of international trade.
We are. We make cargo move through our little port. So.
And I think that's the cutest motto.
Oh, thanks. You know, about $7 billion of product comes through our port every year. So we import about 200,000 cars. We have enough bananas that go around the world 12.5 times. So if you eat a Chiquita or Del Monte banana, it's probably come through the Port of Hueneme.
And I saw recently that you have Maseratis and you've got Ferraris and BMWs and all kinds of amazing exotic cars.
Hyundais, Kias, Saab, Volvo, you name it. Almost every car comes in. I was out at the port the other day and there were Cadillacs that were just lined up every place that you could imagine at the port, exporting to China. So happy about that.
Cadillacs to China.
That's right. They were beautiful, beautiful Cadillacs.
How about that? Were there any pink ones?
You know what? There were all kinds of cars out there. It was really great to see.
Now, I think you reached a record this year in terms of the economic impact to the area, and something around the tune of $13 billion?
We had, it's $13.7 million of revenue that we generated through our port, and we do that with no tax dollars. So none of the citizens in our district pay for the services that we provide and our customers provide to this area. So it brings in about $1 billion of economic activity for this area, and we're very proud to do that without any tax dollars.
Yeah, that's remarkable. That's really something. Yeah, and you create jobs.
We create jobs. About 9,400 jobs are created through the activity that happens at the port. That doesn't mean that all of them are out there at the port working, but a lot of them are. And then everything that's off the port as well, they're created through that activity that comes in.
And briefly, what's the expansion possibility, say in the next 10 years? Just briefly, what's the vision for the expansion on that port?
Well, we share the water with the Navy, and so we are good partners with the Navy, and we have a very small portion of the entire port out there. So we have to look at it very strategically as to how we align with our partners, the Navy, the City of Oxnard, and Port Hueneme. And then also, how can we be good environmental stewards of the activity that goes on there? So we're very conscious about being good environmental stewards, looking at the economic prosperity, and then aligning ourselves with strategic partners.
And that's exactly what we want to talk about today, because you were invited as a board member of the World Affairs Council of the California Central Coast.
Right.
You were invited recently to go to Taiwan. It was back in September, I believe, right?
Right. So the World Affairs Council has a long-standing relationship with the Minister of Foreign Affairs from Taiwan. And so this has been going on for quite a number of years, inviting members over on a delegation to go to Taiwan to learn about everything about Taiwan and come back and spread some news about Taiwan.
And build international relationships, I believe, right?
Absolutely. One of my colleagues for the Association of Pacific Ports sits on the board with me, and so we have a relationship already. So I was able to meet with him and his staff and go through the Port of Taipei and see what the Port of Taipei is doing, and look at how does that relate to the Port of Hueneme as well. The World Affairs Council went over, we had folks that have gone over the last few years to learn more about Taiwan. and to understand a little bit more about their culture and how that they want to participate on an international scale a little bit more than what they currently do.
And since 2008, they have a new president, President Ma.
President Ma.
Who is, I think he is expanding the port and the consciousness or the conscientiousness or just the awareness of Taiwan as an independent country throughout that Asian area, in as much as China Airlines never used to fly to China, and now there's something like 700 flights a day.
There's 700 weekly flights that go to mainland China from Taiwan. Yes, I mean, they made a joke out of it because it was China Airlines, but Taiwan is considered the Republic of China. So it's this tension that has been going on with mainland China and Taiwan. And so since President Ma came on board, they've really worked hard to develop cross-strait agreements with the mainland to build up the relationships and to hopefully reduce some of the anxiety and the conflict that has existed over time. So they're looking more of economic agreements, travel and tourism, building those kind of agreements first, and then looking at ways that you might enter into the political arena at that point, because politics can be very, very tenuous. And
yes, we'll get to that in a minute, because I know there's a huge story going on at the same time you were there, but I think President Ma at the time you were there already had something like 19 trade agreements that had to do with shipping across the Taiwanese Strait from Taiwan to China and back in play.
Well, what they did is they started out looking at how can we develop some economic agreements with mainland. So about 70% of the electronics that come from China are actually made in Taiwan. And so they're their number one trading partners with mainland China. And so they develop a lot of the tools, and a lot of the electronics go to mainland China. So there's actually a big relationship there. What they wanted to do was formalize that in some way, and so it didn't happen until President Ma came on board in 2008, and he really wanted to develop that strong connection there. So they developed agreements like regarding tourism and tourists that are traveling, some air transportation agreements and some sea transportation agreements. So really looking at economically, how can you build up that relationship and moving people and products back and forth across the strait in a very calm way. Because as we know, there were 1,500 missiles pointed at Taiwan from mainland China.
And you asked the question. You went back and you actually proposed this to the Minister of Defense and said, are those missiles still there? Which I think is a really brave question.
Well, the nice thing about it is we met with the ministers of defense, economics, of cultural affairs. I mean, you name it. It was an amazing opportunity. The Minister of National Defense, he was very open with us. And so my colleague had been on this mission 10 years ago. And she said, we were told about these missiles that were pointed at Taiwan every day. 1,500 missiles every day pointed at Taiwan. And so she wanted me to ask, where does it stand now? Are they still pointed there? So I asked him, are there still 1,500 missiles pointed at Taiwan? And he said, yes. And then I asked him, probably the braver question was, do you have any pointed back? And
that was the question,
He said yes. And that's the openness and the frank discussions that they had with us that really was a genuine response to bringing people over, learning about Taiwan, and being able to articulate that back here in the U.S. Their main goal for the Minister of Foreign Affairs is to bring people over to Taiwan, and hopefully we could use our influence back here in the United States to express to the country and to the world the benefit that Taiwan has in the international marketplace. And then hopefully they will gain more status on an international basis.
Yes, I was surprised to learn that you had the royal treatment. You were in the actual offices of each and every minister.
Yeah.
And they, when they come here to the United States, must meet
at Starbucks. Right. That was part of it. I mean, we were greeted in their offices. It was just
royal
amazing.
Treatment.
It was royal
top
treatment.
To bottom.
And they every time we had little gifts for everybody. I just brought a couple examples, where they're very gift-giving people. And
beautiful things.
Aren't those beautiful? Yeah. And so there would be something for everyone at every time that we went. Very gracious people. And we're sitting there in their inner circle, in their inner sanctuary, and asking any question that we wanted to ask. And they don't have that same kind of reciprocal treatment here
in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, yeah.
That's a shame.
Yeah.
So the goal, the ultimate goal here is to build those international relationships by having these kinds of world leadership sort of economic summits and exposure to not only the politics, the education, but the cultural fairs and the cuisine.
Oh my gosh, we ate some amazing food, and some food that I probably never thought I would eat anyways. But it was just, it was amazing. The food was delicious. I'm a very picky eater, so I tried to at least taste everything. But it was
What was the oddest thing you had?
Well, they had what they called goose palm, and basically it's the foot of the goose, and it has a bone that sticks out of it, and then you're supposed to eat the webbing in between. And so I was not brave enough to do that one.
Or anything like that?
It had a brown sauce on it, so I tried the sauce, but I was not adventurous enough to eat that one. When you pulled it up with the chopsticks, then it kind of fell apart. Yeah, it was
oh dear. Yeah, I would have trouble with that too. Oh my gosh, oh my gosh. I think you got to take a high-speed rail too.
We did. We left Taipei and went out to Hsinchu to see the Taiwan semiconductor facility. That they had a huge manufacturing company out in the country, and so we took this high-speed rail. It was certainly the way to go, and we could be out there in an hour where it would have taken 4 hours to get out by bus. So it was a nice, very accommodating rail, and to see the facility out in the country. So it was nice to get away a little bit from the city, because in Taipei they have about 8 million people that work in the city every day, and so they ride the train back and forth out to the country, back to their home.
Did you tell me that the population is around $25 million and 2/5 of them live in the one small area that's habitable?
Yeah. So if we look at this, this is the shape of Taiwan.
Oh, okay.
And so there's 25 million people that live on this little island, and in the middle here is a big mountain range, and so most of them live along this side of the island. And so there's about 3 million that live in Taipei, which is the largest city, and then you have other folks that come into work and then leave. So it's busy, it's crowded, there's a lot of people, but it was very civilized and very comfortable in being around everybody.
What a fortunate trip you had. It's just terrific. And how would you say, as we end our segment here, this ties back to the Port of Hueneme?
Well, in looking at the Port of Taipei and positioning themselves for growth and leadership in the international marketplace, they have some similar areas that we do, processing cars and importing cars. Importing and exporting of agriculture goods. So there's some synergy there. They are a very large port in comparison to what we are, and positioning themselves for growth. They're the closest point to the mainland China. So they've really done a lot of infrastructure. They built their port on a landfill, and so they are really positioning themselves for great growth, and technology plays a big part of that.
And you can export food to them, agriculture, correct?
We could.
Would that be the best relationship possible?
If there's a shipping line that we could do, certainly with Limonera and Mission Avocados and Calavo here in Ventura County, if there was a vessel that would go to Taiwan, it would be an easy sell, because they import about 90% of their agriculture goods.
My word, what a wonderful trip.
Thanks.
What a wonderful trip.
Great.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Mary Anne Rooney, it's a pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you.
In this segment, is there one last thing you'd like to say to the citizens of Ventura about their port?
We have a great time at the Port of Hueneme, and we're doing a lot of innovative things. And my suggestion is, get a tour of the port and see what we're doing out there, and see how this is a regional asset that benefits the entire area.
Oh, that'd be fun. I'd love to go on a tour.
Absolutely, it'd be fun.
Thank you very much for watching Our Ventura TV. I'm Lyn Fairly. Stay tuned.